Welcome to Salvage, a podcast for conversations with artists about the repurposed materials they use in their art practice. Please enjoy my conversation with kHyal. Complex and unclassifiable, kHyal's mixed media work riffs off of pop culture icons and performs like a Rorschach Test in the behavioral science lab, tugging at the neurons of each viewer and born to challenge perceptions. Using ordinary objects snatched from dumpsters, recycle centers, flea markets, tag sales, thrift stores, the ocean, and the street, assembled with raw precision in a dazzling cacophony of visual clutter, each piece decidedly explodes in the human-centric flaws, foibles, and sometimes tragic outcomes of a plastic society. How are you, kHyal? Thank you so much for joining me.
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yeah, it's Kyle.
Okay. Can you explain your spelling, please, if you don't mind?
Let me see. Long story short is that I made up the spelling. I was born Kyle Ann Brown, Braun. I changed it by making up a new spelling and removing the rest in 1981. And then I legally changed it just to one name a little bit later than that. I first just changed the spelling of my first name. Changed in 1981. I changed my middle name to a star shape. That was before Prince was doing things like that.
Oh, that's
And as a
awesome.
citizen, not a celebrity. So yeah, and so I just changed it. I liked it better. It just seemed, and I spell it with a small K and a capital H just because it's more lyrical looking to
Ah.
me. And it turns out, I found out later that Kyle, spelled like I spell it, means imagination in Persian.
Oh, that's so cool. Wow.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So my last name is spelled with a KH at the front.
Yeah. How do you
And
pronounce it?
so in American, it's
Hmm.
pronounced Korover. But I was told, but in Russian,
Hmm.
it's actually a Jewish last name, but I was born in Russia, and in Russia it's pronounced Haravia.
Oh,
So
that's
when I
beautiful.
started studying English, the English teacher, wrote out everybody's names, how it would be in English letters, and she spelt it with a KH because the K is supposed to be silent.
Ah,
So that is in my head, even though in reality, certainly in the United States, that's not how it is. So when I see your name spelled, I'm like, hesitation, like, wait, is the K silent? What do I do?
yeah, I think it confuses a lot of people, which I didn't mean to do. It just, people are not sure how to say it most of the time.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's all right.
Creative expression.
Exactly. That's what we're all about here. So you and I met by chance, and I don't think I even followed you on Instagram before that, but we met at
Oh,
um, the fossil fuel
yeah, the
march,
March to End Fossil Fuels in the fall of 2023. And
right?
I came over to you because I noticed your amazing recrafted umbrella.
Right. Man, that thing was heavy.
Oh, it was. It looks
It
so light.
was. It was one of those golf umbrellas, so the
Ah,
mechanism for it was really sturdy and heavy.
yeah.
And you were wearing the most fabulous outfit.
Yeah, I've used apparel as a self-expression since I was a little kid, actually. I used to, even in grammar school, I would go thrifting when it was something that people were embarrassed by. My mom was definitely embarrassed that I like to wear hand-me-downs and thrift store clothes, but my grandmother would also make or get me like the most outrageous clothes that anything that I wanted.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
I just always used, and I remember I have a memory about like what I wore during certain times. Like I can remember when I spilled paint on my sailor dress in kindergarten. And having to take it off and have it like the teacher washed it while I had to like stay hidden in the bathroom. But I remember events by what I wore. And I have always loved really unique vintage, not necessarily fancy vintage at all. In fact, it doesn't matter to me at all who the label is.
Hmm.
It's more about unique things that there are so few of because they're older, right? So everyone can't go buy it and wear the same thing. I just always thought that was cool.
Hmm.
And I love always combining a lot of patterns and prints. So that turned into later a way when on demand started to be a way you could manufacture.
Hmm.
I got really interested in that. In fact, I had resources much earlier than most even knew that you could do that. Now everybody just takes their art and sticks it on,
Right.
a template, and so it's not really very special anymore. But because I also came from some fashion training, not that I'm into fashion, because I think that's really just about waste. The
Mm.
fashion cycle is about status and waste, and I'm
Yes.
really about apparel as a way to express yourself. So then I started making clothing and using it as a form of activism because I could image my own expression that way, and it was readily available and very little waste, if you
Mhm.
can just make one and
Right.
have no inventory.
Right.
So
So, usually I start these interviews asking if you were an artist as a kid, and sounds like clearly you were an artist as a kid.
yeah, I was always extremely creative. It was hard for me to stay grounded in what was going on around me because I had so much, pull from inside.
Hmm.
And that was difficult because I was always like the weird kid. And when I was very young, I actually used to see things.
Oh,
I saw,
wow.
I saw creatures and I saw a lot of colors and I saw a lot of things. And I think, many kids probably do. It's
Yeah,
just that they may not listen or they're told to ignore it or told to go in another direction. But um, I think all that resistance or, the way people reacted, although it's hard when you're young, it really does build strength over time.
absolutely.
Um, so I'm glad about all of it now. It was very difficult being a child with such different ideas,
That's
but
amazing that you actually have memories of that, though, still.
I do. I have I there's a lot of things I don't remember, but I have a lot of memories about all of that. And plus, I've written about it extensively. I've written, tens of thousands of words about my past, and just I'm also a writer, so I've always written and illustrated. Even when I was young, I would write books and illustrate them.
Uh,
So self-expression has really been, I think we all know if we listen to who we are, who we're born as, that really unravels and unfolds the way it's supposed to for each of us. But society really would prefer everyone be the same. And
yeah.
so I think a lot of people don't learn how to express themselves, right? And so for me, it was definitely I always loved color. Color was always like a battery for me. In fact, color does energize me, so it's almost essential that I have it
Oh,
around me.
I'm actually
Um,
curious. Do you have synesthesia? You
I
know,
don't have any idea what I may or may not have.
hmm.
I just go by instinct.
That's funny. No, it's something that I don't have, but I have a friend who does it. When you say a certain word, she sees it in a certain color. And I think that's an amazing gift to have a condition like that.
Well,
Uh,
I don't like to, I've had plenty of labels and in the past, I clung to certain ones because they made me feel safe. But
mhm.
at this point, I try to avoid attaching any particular labels to myself
Uh,
or others, really. I think and that's really why I simplified my name to one name, too. That's as simple as I could get. I wish I could get, nothing before or after it, but there's, a lot of forms make you put in your identity somehow. And lately I've been using MX or professor because I do teach sometimes, just because they're the least offensive to me.
uh-huh.
Uh, But the government always adds acronyms before or after my name too, even though it's legally changed, you can have one name.
Uh-huh.
They'll either add like UNK for unknown before, which then is really weird because people see it and they try to pronounce like unchyal, which is
Yeah.
then makes it a terrible sounding. I just wanted to be Kyle. So if I knew how difficult it would be to do that, I probably wouldn't have changed it, but it's been so long. So I
Yeah.
have lots of acronyms. They'll put an NLN after it, no last name, or FNU, first name unknown, or last name unknown. So there's three or four acronyms, and they're all different. And then when things don't align, when I travel, it creates a lot of
Ooh.
big issues. Like I've been pulled up, coming back into the country, in the US, landing in the US and being a US citizen with all the right identification, I've still been pulled into rooms where no one else speaks English and I've
Oh
been
no.
questioned and detained in caged, rooms. And in other countries, I've been taken, I got through security, but then I've been like in my socks, had to follow security guards like half a mile through back into little rooms in Berlin where
Oh
they
my
tested my
gosh.
computer for explosives. And I think it's just all because my name is different. And
Yeah.
had I known that, I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's just
Wow.
pointless. It's a lot of pointless aggravation.
Yeah. Wow. That's things that you don't even think about. I mean, there's plenty of people with completely regular first name and last name have
Yeah.
trouble traveling because of, some obscure thing or another. And
Yeah.
you have
Or
added
because
to it.
nothing, or just because they're from a different place, right? Or,
Yeah.
but I'm very American. I speak only English, which is, I'm not happy about, but I just didn't know better.
Yeah.
I didn't have a good Spanish teacher, and so I didn't really attend that class in high school, or I would speak Spanish, but I only speak a little.
Well, you can't have it all, but you certainly seem to be doing so much. I mean, I think I don't know, I spent a very long time on your website the other day looking through all the things that you're doing. Um, and oh my God, I have so many questions.
Yeah, I don't mean to detain you on small talk either.
No, this is fascinating. Not at all. I hope you don't mind me asking you.
No, that's not at all.
Oh, good. Um, so I would love it if you could tell me about I guess your plastic activism.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I've always I've always worked with reclaimed materials for decades. I mean, it's always been as an adult artist. So, I would say that started at 18. Um, I've just always liked things that were used, right? I like them if they're same with apparel, same with like vintage clothing. So I always incorporated into my work a lot of stuff I would go to, thrift stores and flea markets. I was in Boston first. I went to a couple colleges in Boston and then I moved to Los Angeles. And Los Angeles was such a I'd never been to California until I was 18, and I moved there with a one-way ticket and one suitcase.
Oh my.
And it was shocking and amazing to move to Los Angeles. Everything's supersized, everything's super bright, and there was just so much waste. Where I lived, I could walk a couple blocks. I lived quite near, even though I didn't live in a fancy neighborhood, but I could walk a few blocks to, a more close to Beverly Hills area or into Beverly Hills. And when you walk down an alley in those areas at the time in the 80s, there was just so much thrown away, like perfectly good furniture
Oh
and a
wow.
lot of vintage stuff. And then I would go to thrift stores and flea markets and get all kinds of things just to use in my art. I was making big character paintings like the weather squirrel, which is my climate action hero. That's the
Mhm.
most known character. But I was doing big paintings I would do it to actually keep myself company because I was always working. And
Uh-huh.
in my studio, I would just make paintings so that I have creatures kind of like the ones I saw when I was little to keep me company. And I would build on top of the canvas with all kinds of plastics that I would find, toys or like vintage drink stirrers or
Oh.
whatever I would find. And so I really did that for since the early 80s, but in recent years, uh, and I made art to process my life, basically. I never really cared about backtracking a little bit. I never cared much about whether it was exhibited or not because I never made my living or tried to make my living off of art, though I do
Oh,
sell it. It's not, hadn't been my focus. And so it was always just about me processing how, just my life. I think it's a
mhm.
very healthy way, right? Creative
Yeah,
outlets
it's the best
for
kind of
anybody.
therapy.
Yeah. Uh, but I feel like I fully processed myself in terms of being pretty evolved and healthy. And then all I could think about was, okay, how can I help other people, right? It's a glaring problem. So I didn't talk about it in my work because I didn't want my work to be about materials. I wanted my work to be about what was in it. Like you see some of the pieces behind here, and you can't see them closely enough to understand the complexity or the storytelling in them.
Mhm.
But some of them are extremely complex. And, you could look at them and just see superficial things and colors, and that's fine. But I could tell you what my earlier work was about. It's very in-depth personal stuff that I am really expressing. But so I didn't want it to be about materials, even though my materials were reclaimed. And then it became a little bit of the opposite. It's where I really want people to think about the plastics
Mhm.
because of the obvious problems they cause. And I've always known that they caused issues, not to the extent that I understand now, because like you, I've done a lot of training and continue to.
Mhm.
But I was brought up by, my dad was an artist and he was a very sustainable person and he was very against the grain. I mean, we lived in suburbia. My parents got divorced. My dad had bought his mom's house, which was in suburbia, but he let the grass grow like 3 feet tall, and he was the only one in the city, I think, that did that. And he had
Uh-huh.
like built a Japanese garden in the back, and he had a studio, and he
Oh,
just
cool.
always was about the environment, and we always went hiking and camping, and we would paint out in nature all day, and
Mm.
and we were always taught to take everything out with you and make the place at least the same, if not better, than you left it. Uh, so I think I was really lucky to have those values. And I also was crazy about horses. And so I lived near farms growing up, and my neighbors had huge gardens, which I, was very active in helping them with. And
Mm.
then I worked on farms and had a horse. So uh, I really do understand agriculture, even though most people see me as like a more of a city person. And I kind of have gotten extremely urban in a lot of my tastes just because that's where the cultural centers are. I think that's changing now that cities are unreachable for a lot of people because of the
Mm.
costs. I mean, it's New York is just not,
Yeah.
New York anymore because so many people of all types can't afford to live there. But in particular, what I notice is, the lack of artists being able to live
Oh,
there
yeah.
and thrive and have small businesses. There's less and less of that.
It's true. I can't imagine living in New York now. I mean, I grew up in Queens, and I
Yes,
suppose I.
yeah, so you know, and I feel lucky because I live on, another thing is I live right on the shoreline and in Connecticut,
Mhm.
and I live on the Long Island Sound, and so the plastic, back to the original question, the plastic is just so evident to me everywhere. So not only was I always using it in my art, and I've been using horseshoe crab exoskeletons since the 80s. My first show using them was in the mid 80s.
Oh, wow.
And then I've used them since, and now I use them quite heavily in my installations.
Hmm.
And I do a lot of conservation around them. I know that's not plastic, but they're
No, but it's important
they're
too. I know.
they're mired in plastic, and
Yes.
also there's studies that show their eggs now have plastics in them too, and
Oh my gosh.
they feed shoreline migrating birds and a lot of other creatures. I mean, they're a linchpin species for biodiversity.
Hmm.
Um, so, plastic is just, none of us can get away
No.
from it. And I decided to be a person that, I don't think it's good to ever lecture anyone. That doesn't work. It doesn't work to, um, hit too hard with the facts because it overwhelms people, as you know
Yeah,
very
it's
well. You
overwhelming. It's
got to make
distressing.
something
Yeah.
interesting to look at and something that draws curiosity, right?
Yeah.
That people want to talk about. And so I feel kind of lucky to have that challenge because it makes me keep creating things that are I wouldn't probably do. For instance, the plastic horse rescue, which
Yes,
people
do
are
tell about
delighted
that.
with that, you know? Yeah, well, I because I love horses, I always notice them and whatever, if they're real, like live horses, I had a horse and I used to train horses. But whenever I see a horse, when I'm foraging for, materials, I always buy the horses. And I love buying plastic toys out of, thrift stores to keep them out of landfills. And in
Mhm.
particular, most of my source material comes from the Goodwill outlets because they dump. Have you been to a
Oh.
Goodwill outlet? Let me ask you that.
No, I didn't know that there was a Goodwill outlet.
Yeah, they have them. I don't know if they have them where you are. There were more by me. There's not as many now, but there is one that I can drive to pretty easily, and I go there a lot. I've been there probably over 100 times,
Mm.
and it's a huge warehouse, and they get all the junk that didn't sell in a store or didn't even maybe make it to a store, and
Uh-huh.
they dump it in these big bins that they roll out, and they roll them out in a line. And you can't, like, there's this whole culture there. You cannot touch anything in the bins in the new lines that they put out until they're all out. And people stand around and they fight. If you don't follow the rules, they can get quite intense. So I
Oh,
can
wow.
avoid the new stuff because I actually want the stuff that nobody else wants because I know it's going to go in a landfill then.
Right.
So when the new stuff comes out, people, it's like piranhas. I mean, they attack it, and there's no empty space around, 30 feet, 30 feet of bins on either side because people just, that's their livelihood, I think now. There's
Wow.
some people that just do that for a living. And I go after they've been ravaged. I have heavy rubber gloves and I dig through the bins. And you never know. Sometimes there's hardly anything that I would use, but a lot of times there is, and it's buried underneath. A lot of times it's broken, which is fine with me
Mhm.
too. But in that are, thousands of toys, and
Oh,
many
and
of
mostly
them,
plastic.
yeah, oh yeah, almost all plastic. And so this is, and these bins are only out for a couple of hours,
Hmm.
and then they take them all out. And I interview different people that work there every time. I mean, I'll just ask casually like what happens because I don't know how straightforward the management is about what
Yeah.
happens with all the waste. So I kind of just do my investigative journalism when I'm there. And I've been told that the stuff goes onto trucks and into landfills after that. Like, so, or shipped to somewhere else, or incinerated into
Yeah.
landfills or to another country landfill.
Oh,
And I don't think it's easy to find out the facts on all of that,
yeah.
but it's nothing good.
No.
So there you can buy all this stuff, and you can buy furniture too. That's not usually by the pound, but they throw all kinds of stuff in, and it's not always easy. They'll throw like vacuum cleaners and nightstands into these plastic bins that are kind of up high, and
Uh-huh.
then no one can move that stuff around effectively. Like the management says, they do their best, but it's not ideal for preserving things that might have value
Yeah.
because a lot of people break things trying to get to something else.
Hmm.
Um, but at least some of it's getting out and it's sold by the pound and it's cheap.
Wow.
I think the most expensive you can pay if you buy the minimum amount, which is maybe under 10 pounds, is like 165 a pound or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and if there's some really heavy object that you're interested in, you can ask and they'll give you like it might be $1.99
Hmm.
instead of by the pound, because some things would be, if it's metal,
Yeah, it
it
could be
would be,
expensive.
not worth it.
Right.
So I learned a lot, like even in thrift stores though, lifelong. I remember when, I was in grammar school going to thrift stores, it wasn't people like my family, which I really appreciated too. Same thing with public transportation. I love taking public transportation, in different cities, everywhere I go. And one of those reasons is because I see a lot of people that aren't like me or my
Mhm.
neighborhood. And I really enjoy that, whatever it is. It's a lot of people don't like public transportation for that reason, but I find it really interesting.
I agree with you. I love
Yeah.
taking the subway in New York City. I love
Yes.
it. I just
Yeah.
it's like a whole people watching on a whole different level.
Yeah, and also you meet people. Like the great thing about my apparel is that it's so different that it attracts attention, and it usually people will only talk to me if they think it's interesting. So
Right.
it's like a filtering system for people who want to talk about, and they may say like today, like I'm going to lift up, this is a plastic horse rescue. This is just some of the horses that I've rescued on this shirt. And then I used all these in pieces later.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but if I'm wearing something like this, it might be the sanitation workers that are liking it. It might be, someone on Wall Street. It might be, it could be anybody that starts the conversation.
Yeah.
Or even if I go to, get something to eat and I'm in a line, like the person who serves me might be like, you made my day because of all the color. And then or, kids will get interested and I'll get to talk about, well, I rescued these horses. In this case, I mean, every outfit is different.
Mhm.
Uh, I rescued these because when people are done playing with toys of any age, mostly they throw them away or they put them in a thrift store and they think they're going to go to somebody, but they often don't. They very often don't because they're not perfect,
Yeah.
right? And so the plastic horse rescue, I cleaned them up, and some of them are perfect just as they are. I don't mind their imperfections or brokenness, and they go into a piece. But I also clean some up, and I also remove the batteries. A lot of them have broken batteries, the ones that
Oh,
are moving.
right.
And of course, that's terrible for the landfills. There's
Yeah.
so many toys with batteries that are just dumped. And you have to have the really small screwdrivers, but you can replace the batteries if you're going to keep it or rehome it. And so
Mhm.
I also allow people to, when I have like open studios, which is just once a year, we have open studios in my building.
I know.
There's
I missed it. I saw at the last minute that you were having
yeah.
an open studio, and I was like, ah.
I wish I had sent you an invite. It just gets so overwhelming. There's so much going on and I forget. And
Yeah.
yeah, I would have loved for you to have been there. And I just took down that installation, but I have it well documented. And my son is a videographer and motion graphics professional.
Oh,
So he did one video, which you might have seen, where I'm in it. It's on the Soundly Caring website, and it's under plastics. It's at
uh-huh.
the top of the plastics page, and he put me in the same video like 4 times in the installation. So I'm twirling, and then I'm sitting, and so it's pretty fun what he was able to do.
Oh,
But
that's
he's making
fun.
another video for me, so I'm trying to document things, to sort of continue their use
Hmm.
because whereas before I was really kind of selfish about my work, like you're the opposite. To me, you embody community,
Oh.
and I now think about that a lot more. I mean, I always thought about it as a human being, but never like my nature is very. I'm an introvert
Hmm.
most of the time, and my
Me
art
too.
but oh, my
Very
art was
much
really
so.
for me, but I think, you know, um, I just can't get through like even every really a second, I don't think, without thinking about the state of where we are right now and how urgent it is to do something. And I feel so lucky to have processed all the things that I have in my life and gotten through a lot of challenges. And so now I really like it makes me I'm driven to be part of community and to
Hmm.
try and extend my work so that it reaches more people.
Yeah.
Where
I saw that
before it
you
was, I didn't care if people saw it.
okay. So I saw that you're doing some workshops with kids in the local schools in Connecticut.
Well, I had a grant to do. I actually I chose the Wakeman Boys and Girls Club location in Bridgeport, which
Mhm.
is part of a environmental justice community, which, that criteria, I think it might be different in every state,
Mhm.
but in Connecticut, it's folks under a certain income that are, strategically, the things that are around them are are bad for the environment and bad for human health and bad for like in all ways.
Mhm.
And I am also right on the edge of that same community, and I am trying to encourage and empower young people to see what's going on around them because the plastic pollution and the lack of understanding about wildlife and its importance in everyone's life is not being fostered. So that was why I chose this one facility to do a series of workshops in. And I also have my own beach cleanups and I do more impromptu education at the beach all the time because
Mhm.
especially around horseshoe crabs, which people abuse them like humans abuse many animals because they see this as they'll stand on them because they don't know any better, or they might throw something at a horseshoe crab because they're scared of it. So I teach people, kids and kids of all ages, how to handle them and that how important it is, like if you see one on its back, to flip it over
Right,
because it will either get eaten, usually in the case here, eaten by seagulls or dehydrate and die,
right.
and that it's just really important that they're cared for.
Yeah, they're
Uh,
such fascinating animals.
yeah,
I remember encountering them on Long Island beaches,
yep.
and I certainly didn't, yeah, I didn't know about them until I guess I was probably a teenager, but they're like supposedly some of the oldest animals on the planet.
Yeah, 450 million plus years, so way older than dinosaurs or anything. They pretty much look the same as they did. Now, unfortunately, in New York, your governor did not choose to sign the bill to protect them this year.
Oh,
And so hopefully she's going to do that next year. I know they're not going to stop trying.
okay.
But I have to tell like all the horseshoe crabs that I meet to stay away from Long Island. Don't go to the Long Island beaches. Just stay over in Connecticut. Because there they can be harvested legally. And here we did have a bill passed 2 years ago. I went to the bill signing where it's illegal to harm a horseshoe crab. You can't.
Why would
Um,
you even want to harvest them?
Traditionally they have been used in the, hundreds of thousands for bait for an industry that doesn't need them. It's just specifically for conch, for
Oh,
bait for conch and maybe eels. And what they do then is just, throw them, into piles and trucks. There's vintage and maybe antique, maybe over 50-year-old photos, right, that show how they used to treat horseshoe crabs and just pile them in trucks. And they cut them, they quarter them, and then use them as bait.
oh my
So,
gosh.
again, most people don't, they just don't understand. It's been normalized that we harm animals or we hide how they are processed,
Yes,
right? So, but these are like any living creature, when you cut it into pieces while it is alive, it's going to feel pain.
of course.
Um,
Of course.
true for all and
Yeah,
all
whether
living
they can
things.
scream or not, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Yeah.
So the other big issue is that the pharma companies they say over 500,000 from, the Northeast area a year, and they bleed them. You've probably seen the pictures.
No.
They There's a lot of articles in this past year. Even NPR has them. But if you just Google that, or I can send it to you, but anyone can Google horseshoe crabs being bled by pharma companies. They strap them like onto a bar, and they'll have like, I don't know, like 12 strapped to a bar, and then they put a needle in their heart and bleed about half their blood out, and their blood is blue because their blood is used to test human vaccines. It detects bacteria and other things that would actually harm people if it were introduced into their blood systems.
Oh, wow.
Um, but there is a synthetic alternative, and that's what we need to be using.
Yeah. Wow. I
There
had no
wasn't in the
idea.
past, but there has been for a while. So that's what needs to change. And then the pharma companies return them to the ocean and say that they're fine, but they're not. A lot of them die.
Yeah.
They have a very low percentage, but the research that I've read
Mhm.
counters that.
Right. Yeah. Because all
Yeah.
the research that they have doesn't all come out for everyone to see, just like
Yeah.
the plastics industry.
Yeah, well, the plastics industry, as you know, it is, we need a lot of people that care about that because it's so rampant and it's so toxic.
Oh, yeah. I was
Um,
just so as this podcast is not going to be this episode will be out, I want to say in sometime in May, but right now we're talking in January and the
mhm.
fires are raging in Los Angeles. And
Yeah,
I just read this morning about how toxic the fumes from these fires are because there is so much plastic in the homes that we're burning, the
yeah,
furniture, the countertops,
yes,
the
it's
floors,
true.
the siding, everything is plastic. And it's
Well,
all the fires are releasing so many chemicals.
even without the plastics, the smoke from fire
Yeah.
is very toxic, and air pollution is kills. I just read a stat: 8 million people a year, 4 million, and I'm not sure that might be an older stat. It could be higher now. It was part of a class I just finished. Um, Half of that number is indoor air pollution.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it is by all those things, but yes, you're right. And I actually am going to Los Angeles in 4 or 5 days.
Mm.
So I will see a little bit of that and have many friends and family in Los Angeles. So yeah, it's extremely toxic. Of course, that's what people don't get. They also don't understand that most of their recyclables are incinerated. They certainly are in Connecticut. I know they
And
are, and it happens not that far from me,
yeah.
which,
No,
I
they
know
are.
it's
And I live in
poisoning us
Westchester.
all.
Yeah, I live in Westchester County and our
Yeah,
trash, including the plastics, gets incinerated here as well.
yeah. And
Yeah.
especially so people, for one, they think you can recycle everything. Here it's just ones and twos.
Yep.
We try, but the
In
rest
most
are
of the
not.
country, it's ones and twos. That's what I
Yeah.
keep. I mean, you and I both took that plastic, the Beyond Plastics class to
Yep.
learn about all of that. Um, but yes, so many people don't know, and the facts are not easy to find. Yeah, it's awful. All right, let's get back to art.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so you do also performance art?
Yeah, I do less formal performance art now, but I feel like most of my work is performance in one way or another, interacting with it.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I used to do a lot of performance art. I mostly started doing that because I was so shy. I was so shy I could barely speak to people when I was in school, like in high
Wow.
school even. I would get sick just walking through the cafeteria in high school
Oh,
my anxiety was so high. So I forced myself to take speaking classes, which were horrible for me. I mean, it was like constant anxiety. And, so that's what anything performance driven is. And so I don't, it's so experimental, my performance, that I can't even really explain it, except at its real beginnings in the early 80s. I was using a lot of MIDI at the beginning when you could use MIDI as a consumer, basically, when personal
what's a
computers
MIDI?
came out. Um, musical, it's a digital musical interface.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and it's a standard term. It's a standard acronym. GarageBand does about 1 million times more than the older stuff used to do. When I first started doing experimental music, it was in a class I was not signed up for. I wasn't signed up at all to go to the museum school in Boston, but I did go to those classes, and I was taught how to do experimental music with patch cords into a piece of plywood. That was before personal computers, but then I'm a self-taught technology person.
Oh,
And so
wow.
I would do it took about six feet by 6 feet of electronics to do just basic stuff back then. But I would do sampling and then I would sing on top of it, but I would also distort my voice with technology.
Oh,
And then I
wow.
would do lighting and then painting and background. So I would do kind of fully immersive performance in galleries
Oh, wow.
and
That's so
other
cool.
spaces and record it, really using anything and everything, but a lot of electronics, computers and things and video and old school stuff. I've used to do installations. I'd use 50s slide projectors, but on those I was using modern, and at the time that was the 80s. I was using video and not on the slide projectors, but I was using slides I made from an Amiga computer by drawing with a mouse,
Ah,
and that was a new thing.
that's very
Um,
cool. Wow.
yeah, so I kind of used what's at hand. I was very much into early computer art because there was hardly anyone doing it.
Mhm.
Personal computers had just come out, so really there was not very many people doing art that way, and it was all experimental. Now I don't really care what the medium is. I want the medium, to be something interesting.
Mm. So
So I
you,
don't care if it's found objects or if it's electronics. So
uh-huh, you're open to it all. That's
yeah.
wonderful. Oh. So you, if you don't mind me asking, you said that you don't worry about selling your art because that is not how you make a living. May
Right.
I ask how you make a living?
Of course. And that has a lot of answers too. I'm a graphic designer by trade.
Ah,
And then I got into more marketing stuff in my career, and I was in educational publishing.
mm,
And, I did a lot of the, even business development and marketing for
right.
educational publishing, which was great because most of the people in that world are pretty interesting. They're either writers or designers or, right, so illustrators. Um, that was interesting. But also, I worked in technology. I had a software company. I had a interactive agency in the 90s, and
What
I
is an
now work a
interactive
lot.
agency?
Oh, that means like developing software and websites. As soon as you could make a website, I was building websites
Oh,
in
wow.
before the internet. I was online too. I was online in the 80s. The internet, publicly, really 1995 is when people were building websites. So I had a company that was building websites, but really anything interactive that involves software and, a connected device.
Ah, very
Um,
cool.
and more recently, really, a lot of my work since I've been in fintech, financial technology, really all kinds of tech. Did a lot of sustainable work, agri-tech projects in India, sustainable
Wow.
wind and solar in Europe and Africa, South America, and also even things like in 2017, I had a client in Panama City, Panama, who most of the people had some involvement in Washington, D.C. before that, and had gone to American schools, but they were South American
Mhm.
stakeholders, some from Spain. And I helped launch an asset management arm of a financial services company that only supported sustainable infrastructure projects in Latin America and the Caribbean.
Oh,
And
wow.
so that's fascinating because they were using the UN principles, so I was really working in sustainability, but in that way, it was aligning the UN principles and their mission into a complete messaging system and also branding and also writing about it. So, all the communications, what that company looked like, and how they conveyed their messaging to the world.
Oh, wow.
So, pretty much full service. And that's why, I have an agency, it's called Fizz Agency, and that's my communications arm. And I used to pull in more people, and I sometimes do, but it's really more about you do more consulting than anything else now.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do pull in teams, like actually my husband and my son often work with me on projects, but a lot of my work is in cybersecurity, and so I just get contracts,
Hmm.
and mostly I write thought leadership content for cybersecurity companies.
Oh, wow.
And I do that in contract chunks, and they're often renewed. It might start at 3 months, or I'll start out as a vendor on a purchase order, as an LLC, which is my company. Then they want to bring me in as a contract employee because that's just the way these big tech companies often work.
Oh, I see.
And then they extend the contract if I do adequate work. And most of those are 20 hours a week.
Oh, wow.
So I have I have a lot of time to work on other projects as well.
That's
And
awesome. It sounds like you've figured out a way to
yeah,
earn a living and be able to practice your art.
yeah, and I really enjoy I've been working in technology since the 80s, right? And so I enjoy it. It's really challenging. I'm always learning, and because a lot of my work is research.
Hmm.
I have to research each topic I write about. It's kind of like journalism, and I
Hmm.
do a lot of journalism too. Um, but I do journalism more out of my interest because it just really doesn't pay very well, unfortunately.
Mm.
So, I cover conferences and events, but anyway, the core of my work is heavy duty research and then thought leadership pieces on cybersecurity
Wow.
topics that are like often 2 to 3,000 words each.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I do enjoy that. And I feel grateful because it helps people so much too. I mean, that realm of the world is not getting any better. There's
No.
new there's new issues every day. And when I see, so many people are harmed by it, right? And it's really about the end user. I mean, the work I do is for big companies, but the end user is all of us,
Yeah.
because if you're serving a bank or Amazon or, it doesn't matter who the company is that is using the software systems, like it's usually software as a service, SaaS platforms that are, the companies I work for,
Hmm.
they're supporting and protecting really every company we use online,
Wow.
our financial institutions, healthcare.
Hmm.
So it's actually, it's not, I feel lucky about too is that I've never had to work on something I don't believe in, like
That's good.
soda.
Right.
Soda companies that cause diabetes, and
Yeah.
no offense to anybody that might work on that stuff, but or tobacco. It's just I really try to work in areas that are for good.
Yeah. That's wonderful. I have to be honest with you. All of that is kind of incomprehensible to me. It's so way over my head, but it's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just another lane. It's kind of natural for me because I've been doing it for so long.
Hmm.
It's just another,
Yeah.
it's another thing it's helpful to know about it. And so I try and share that with other people too, how to protect themselves, even
Yeah.
as a consumer. I do it at the consumer level too. Most of it's enterprise and B2B, but I also do work in cybersecurity. I'm on the advisory board for Bitdefender, which is consumer based. And
Uh-huh.
that's all about doing testing to make it more understandable for the average person and more usable. And
Yeah.
because you
And
can
that's what we
you can
need.
buy the software, you can buy, Norton Utilities used to be the big name in that, or McAfee
Mhm.
or Bitdefender, and put it on your phone and your computer. But if you don't know how to install it or monitor it, it's not going to protect you.
Nope.
So it's hard, but it's important. It's important, and I will end that with the note that do not use the same password. Always try and enact as many security devices, mechanisms as you can. Including multi-factor authentication, and
Yes.
especially with financial services and healthcare information.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's a whole other world out there. Oh.
Yes. So anyway,
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. All right, so to just bring it back, if you don't mind, to art,
yeah.
what do you think is an artist's role in fighting plastic pollution?
I think that is so different. I think that really depends. It's completely independent. There's many ways to do that as there are artists, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think building awareness in any way that you can is really the most you can do.
Hmm.
Um, and that's where the creativity comes in. Like, how will you do it that people are going to remember and act on?
Yeah.
Some people like to make very beautiful work that doesn't look like it was made from um, plastic, right? Or it doesn't address that. So you would have to read about it to know. Other people, it's very obvious. Like most of my work, it's pretty obvious, depending on what lane that is, right?
Right.
Um, it can be very obvious what the work is about. So I don't, I don't think, I think we all have a responsibility to steward this earth, and I don't think it matters at all if you're an artist or not.
Hmm.
um, how you're going to help people understand and make change in the use of plastics. So I really, I guess I don't have a good answer for that because I don't think it's on artists to do it or there's one way to do it. I
No,
think artists have many ways that they can bring a lot of awareness
yeah,
and
absolutely. I mean,
education.
that's the key, right? I mean, everyone does, you don't have to be an artist um to make people aware. Everybody can do that. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's if we can get people excited about their own power to make change
Hmm.
towards the goal of reducing plastic. I don't really say stop plastic production because I mean I used to be idyllically hopeful about that, but we really just have to reduce it, and we can reduce it so much.
We can start by
Yeah,
getting rid of the single-use plastics, or
yeah,
most of them, packaging.
yeah,
That's the key right there. I mean, there's a lot of plastic that is needed, especially
yeah.
in medicine, and we we can't get rid of it all, but we certainly can curb quite a lot of it.
And what I especially like, I am working with other kids. A lot of people have contacted me. The more I do, the more I get contacted by educators and libraries to do work. So I have a couple things coming up that way. And when I get the chance to speak to children, I think that is the opportunity. I think it's super exciting that they're in a place where they can invent new ways, right? Unfortunately, they have to invent ways to undo all the damage we've done.
Yes.
But in that same vein, there's countless ways that they could contribute in exciting new technologies or methods, right, to alleviate the plastic issue.
Yeah, that's true. No, there was a one of the slogans that I have seen from was it the Fridays for Future marches is that the kids can save the planet.
Yeah, because they can look at this as a problem. We didn't look at it as a problem, right? When plastic started, plastic was seen as a solution. But
Yeah,
now that it's clearly a problem, and young people are being born into a problem, not a solution with plastic,
yeah,
that it can be looked at completely differently.
yeah, yeah.
And I just saw I covered as a journalist the Hacker Summit, which is a Swiss conference that had its inaugural debut at New Lab in Brooklyn about a month ago. And I saw a company called Brimstone, it was founded by a chemist who
Hmm.
found a new configuration of the same exact components that make up cement, but there's no carbon emissions. And
Oh
one of the
wow.
biggest problems with cement is carbon emissions. It's
Huh.
called brimstone, if you want to check it out.
Yeah.
So that's a kind of an example where that could disrupt in a great way, the
Mhm.
entire built environment, which is one of the most offensive,
Yeah, I mean, it's
in
everywhere.
terms of damage to the environment. And so that's where, like, just looking at things differently and bringing new skills and thinking new ways, that's why I think it's very exciting what kids might be able to problem solve for. but kids too hear a lot of propaganda. And so I run into kids that are very excited, like they visited my installation. A lot of them are extremely on the ball about plastic pollution, but they heard about solutions and they thought they were real.
Yeah.
They're like, well, now there's a microbe, or now there's this, or you can do this. And I'm like, nope, here's why you can't do that. Here's why you can't. So we have to, provide ways for kids to research further.
Yeah.
And I think with the media going the way it is, it's harder to do that. And with
Yeah.
I mean, AI creates a lot of content and it bases it on content that already exists. And a lot of that content was now created by AI. And therefore, never mind the media trying to slant things.
Oh, wow.
AI as a tool is also got a lot of considerations people may not be thinking of if they don't work in it.
No, that's interesting. So it's already created a lot. So now it's creating upon something it's already it created, not from
Yeah,
someone. Yeah.
it depends on where how the large language models are developed, and a lot of them just scrape other information. So in the industry I work in cybersecurity, a lot of the content that's out there, it really doesn't say a lot. It's generic, and then some of it might be incorrect, but that might just be morphed into a new fiction
Wow.
or misinformation,
Right.
or just it's not getting to the deep stuff. So, there is accessible information if you really dig for it, including on plastics and all kinds of other
Yeah.
sustainability issues, but you have to find academic reports.
Right. That's the thing. You have to really dig at it. It's not easy to find. And,
Right.
all those big companies that are still creating a lot of plastic that is completely unnecessary are
Yeah.
so big and
Yep.
so well funded that they can hide a lot of that stuff.
Well, yeah, and that's with plastics, that's so true. I mean, there is so much greenwashing in the billions, right? And lobbying
Yeah.
against the truth.
Yeah.
So I think what we really need to teach people is not only make them aware of the issues, but how to get to the facts.
Yeah.
And I think Beyond Plastics is a great
Yeah.
organization for
They are.
that. Yeah.
They are. And oh, I guess by the time this podcast comes out, it's going to be too late, but they're starting the spring semester soon. So
Yes.
I'll share that elsewhere.
Yeah, I tell everybody, it's just like the easiest way to leave off my conversations with adults. You want to know more, just look at
Yeah.
beyondplastics.org.
Oh, yeah. I can't tell you how many people I've met that I haven't even really interacted with, but I posted stuff on Instagram and they'll come to me and they'll be like, I took that class you told me about. I'm like, oh, God, awesome. You don't even have to take the class. You can just go on their website and get all the information.
And
It's
on that note, we need to recruit more men, right?
yes.
There's like at least 90% women in
A-
all of those classes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
See,
Uh,
that's a new way that's like another campaign that needs to be worked on to get
well,
men educated and to be activists against plastic pollution.
there you go. So, is that something your fizz agency can do?
Well, I'm calling that work now. I put that under soundly caring. Like I have like my business stuff, which is a lot of it is sustainable, but I want it to be more like um, a movement,
Mhm.
right? And it's not exactly my art. It involves art, but it's more than that too. So yeah. And
And you
soundly
call
caring
it
started
soundly.
about the Long Island Sound, but now it's really about just soundly caring, right?
Oh,
It's like authentically caring. So it works, I think, for everything. And I
oh,
have a lot of campaigns, the Plastic Horse Rescue, the nature of plastics is another one of my things that I do. The
what's the
sound of
nature of plastic?
plastic.
The sound of plastic I saw, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the nature
So,
of plastic isn't it isn't public right now.
oh,
I have launched a small apparel version of it, but I did a poster series a couple years ago, but it was like I haven't made that public. I just
oh,
did,
okay.
yeah, but I will. I mean, it's not a secret. It is going to be a campaign. And that started with the cellophane on all the beautiful flowers that I see when I'm in New
Mm,
York all the time, walking by,
yep.
with the bodegas in the flower district, and everything's covered in plastic.
Everything. Everything. Oh wow. Well, can anyone buy your apparel? Because I was actually on your site. I was like, I made a pledge to myself to not buy anything new for
Good.
clothing this year. But I
Yeah.
was like, but I was coveting your t-shirts, and I was like, but I could that's a t-shirt that's good for the environment. I can allow
Oh
myself.
yeah, I don't encourage people to buy my stuff. I make some of it available. I mean, I did like my original plan in 2010. I went back to school to FIT for the Sustainable Entrepreneur Program, right? For the exact reason is that I started to fiddle around with making stuff and people wanted to buy it. And I was like, I don't know enough about manufacturing. I don't want to do something unsustainable. And, through that whole process, it's just convinced me that it's a bad idea to make stuff.
Mm,
So make new stuff. So, you might have seen that I have some caveats on my listings, like don't order this unless you really want it. You're going to take care of it and you're going to, pass it along or make sure it gets a circular end.
oh, that's great.
It's because no, I don't really want to encourage people, but the Deplastify hat this is organic cotton and it does have a good message. So I do have things like this available, but I don't encourage people to buy my stuff unless they're really going to make good use of it and keep it a long time or make sure it goes to a place where it's properly recycled, upcycled, or part
Now,
of the circular economy.
did I see that you make custom apparel too?
I do. I make that out of other things. Like that's all thrift store plus other materials that are found. I try to get always used materials. Even like I don't even like to buy paint. So when I paint, I use house paint. I use all kinds of paint that people are getting rid of.
Mm.
And the same with, I end up making some couture pieces, which take a really long time, but they're like one of them it got ridiculous amount of attention. It was quite a while ago, but I got a thrift store coat, maybe from the 60s, but it was a white faux fur, still had the
Mm.
tags on it, and I got it from the Goodwill. But I don't really wear just plain coats, right? It would have to be either a color. So I had, amassed some zip ties that were fluorescent colors that had been their second market, right? And so I opened up the lining and I poked through 1,500 individually and sewed them into the back
Oh
so
my
they come
gosh.
out of the faux fur like a porcupine. So it goes all down the back and down the sleeves. And then I just wore it everywhere. And I was featured in so many things from people just see it. And it was the simplest thing, right? It was just
Right.
two materials, one coat that a person didn't want anymore, right? And donated to a thrift store. And second market, plastic zip ties.
Right.
And those two things together, that's the magic that we as artists, or really anyone who, even if you're not an artist or don't think of yourself as an artist, you can take materials that exist and do something new, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And when it gets a lot of attention, then you have a chance to talk about why and why it's important, for everyone to be thinking about this and do what they can.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Conversations. That's really how to get through to people, right? You just got to have a
Yeah,
conversation.
it's education. It's education and working together and not trying to get people to be somebody other than that they are, because that doesn't work. We
Yeah.
all have to focus on our strengths and passions, and there is enough to go around. There are so many ways, right, to help this issue, no matter what you want to contribute.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be art, it's activism, it can be said so many ways, and there's so many really it is beyond plastic, right? Because it's not just plastic. You could pick any part of the environment to steward.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of ways to help. And that's what the awareness helps stir something in people that they recognize that they can do something too, and
Yeah.
that we all need to, because it is our earth and our responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
The
absolutely true.
government's not going to fix it.
No, it's up to us. No. Well,
Yep.
thank you, Kyle. I think that's a perfect place to end on a
Yes.
encouraging note like that.
Always. Yep. Well, thank you so much. I think your podcast is terrific. I watched quite a few episodes, and I thank you very much for taking the time and energy to do it, because it's another thing that really, I think, helps and gets the word out.
Thank you. Thank you. I love doing it, and I love the conversations I get to have.
So I look forward to us catching up in person when we can too.
Yes, I'd love to do that. Thanks so much for being there. That was an all-encompassing conversation. So many topics covered. Fascinating. I could probably ask 1,000 more questions, and I still wouldn't get a lot of what she's doing. And that's the beauty of it all, right? Thank you so much for being here, and stay tuned for the next episode. We are making our way through Earth Month, and I hope you have taken the time to take a look at the Repurposer Collective website, see what we're all about, and join us, because the doors to the Repurposer Collective are open during Earth Month. That's April 2025. Take a look and join us. We are all about making art with repurposed materials, doing our best to help ourselves and this planet to make it through this Plasticine era. Please join us. Take a look at repurposercollective.com. Thanks. This podcast was created, produced, and edited by me, Natalia Korover. Theme music by R.C. Gaida.